The ticking clock. The grandfather clock in the hall hammered out its rhythm, a stark cadence against the silence, each tick a painful reminder of time's relentless march. Eleanor remained in her armchair, the contours of which Thomas had jokingly claimed mirrored her own. Now, it felt like a vast, echoing space beside her. 90 days. 90 days since the earthquake that had swallowed her world whole. The garden lay untended, its roses, once radiant, now a riot of thorns and tangled growth that mirrored the defenses she'd erected around her heart. Words on a page dissolved into abstract shapes before her eyes. Even her beloved Earl Grey, usually a balm to her soul, tasted faintly of cinders. That incessant ticking was turning to torture, an ominous countdown to some dreaded, unforeseen event. Abruptly, she rose and stilled the pendulum's swing. The sudden hush was almost violent in its intensity, an emptiness that roared his absence. She had to escape. Breathe something other than grief-saturated air. Needed something. What, she couldn't name. After a moment's hesitation before the coat rack, she abandoned her familiar raincoat for a lighter jacket, a fragile acknowledgement of the sun's existence, however faint its warmth felt. The library? It remained a steadfast beacon, a place they both held sacred. Thomas, a devotee of historical tomes, consumed them with an almost feverish passion. She preferred the intricate puzzles of mysteries, and the intimate glimpses offered by biographies. Hours melted away there, immersed in separate narratives, bound by the hushed turning of pages and the comforting scent of aging paper. The short walk felt arduous, each footfall heavy with loss. The town, once intimately known, now seemed subtly foreign, each street robbed of its familiarity without his hand clasping hers. Shop windows blazed with color, children shrieked with laughter in the park, couples strolled with carefree ease. Envy, sharp and swift, gave way to a surge of guilt. At last, the library rose before her, a solid brick structure, its arched windows promising refuge. Stepping through the heavy oak doors, she inhaled the familiar perfume of beeswax and aging paper, a soothing balm on her raw nerves. The quiet murmur of voices, the gentle tap of keyboards, the whisper of turning pages, a soft, comforting chorus. She paused, absorbing the atmosphere. Something had shifted here, too. A subtle warmth, perhaps. Or simply her own altered perception, finding solace in the library's steadfast presence. She spotted Mrs. Higgins, the librarian, her face perpetually creased into a welcoming smile, behind the counter. Recognition sparked in the librarian's eyes. "Eleanor! It's been far too long. We've missed seeing you." Eleanor offered a wan smile. "Hello, Mrs. Higgins. It's good to be back." Mrs. Higgins, with a gentleness born of long experience, refrained from probing. She simply nodded. "Well, take your time. A new shipment of mysteries just arrived. I placed them by the window, knowing they'd be right up your alley." Eleanor nodded, her voice caught in her throat. Making her way to the designated table, she trailed her fingertips across the spines of the books. A beginning. A tentative step back into the world. A fragile spark of hope ignited in the gloom. A shared mystery. Eleanor wandered the hushed aisles of the library, the scent of old paper and binding glue a familiar comfort. She found herself drawn, as she often was, to the mystery section. Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers, Josephine Tay, their names lined the shelves like trusted friends. It was a predictable habit, perhaps, but in the carefully constructed worlds of detectives and clues, she found a temporary escape from the unpredictable chaos of her own life. She ran a finger along the spines, her gaze settling on a particularly intriguing title. The Silent Stone. The cover depicted a crumbling manor house shrouded in mist, a single, ominous raven perched on a gargoyle. Intrigued, Eleanor reached for the book, her fingers brushing against another hand. A jolt, not unpleasant, shot up her arm. She looked up to see a young man, his cheeks flushed with a matching surprise. He had kind eyes, the color of warm honey, and a scattering of freckles across his nose. He looked endearingly rumpled, as if he'd just woken up from a pleasant dream. "Oh, excuse me," she murmured, retracting her hand. "No, please." he said, his voice surprisingly deep. I was just admiring it myself. He gestured to the book. The cover's rather striking, isn't it? Eleanor nodded, her heart doing a strange little flutter. It caught my eye, too. Have you read it? He shook his head. Not yet. I've been meaning to, though. I'm a sucker for a good mystery, especially ones with brooding manor houses and cryptic clues. He gave a self-deprecating smile. Guilty pleasure, I suppose? Not at all, Eleanor said, feeling a smile tug at her own lips. I find them quite absorbing. A puzzle to be solved, a world to get lost in. Exactly. His eyes lit up. It's the perfect antidote to, well, to everything else. He hesitated, then extended his hand. I'm Leo, by the way. Leo Maxwell. Eleanor, she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was warm and firm. Eleanor Willowbrook. Eleanor, he repeated, the name sounding unfamiliar and lovely on his tongue. So, Eleanor Willowbrook, are you going to claim the Silent Stone for yourself? She glanced back at the book, then back at Leo. Perhaps we could share it? The words were out before she could fully process them, a surprising surge of boldness rising within her. Leo's smile widened. Share it? How so? Well, Eleanor stammered, suddenly feeling self-conscious. We could read it at the same time? And discuss it? If you'd like, of course. He considered this for a moment, tapping his chin thoughtfully. A shared mystery, you say? That sounds intriguing. Almost as intriguing as the book itself. He paused. I'm in. It would be much more fun to have someone to bounce theories off of. Eleanor felt a warmth spread through her chest, chasing away the familiar chill that had settled there since Thomas's passing. Then, shall we? She picked up the book, a sense of anticipation bubbling within her. This could be the start of something new. Coffee and conversation. Coffee? Leo asked, his voice a hopeful lilt. He gestured vaguely towards the village square. There's a nice little cafe just across from the apothecary. Their lattes are, well, they're practically a work of art. Eleanor hesitated, pleating the corner of the library book in her hands. The idea of spending more time with Leo was undeniably appealing, a bright flicker in the otherwise muted landscape of her days. But a familiar anxiety tightened in her chest. Was she ready for this? For anything? I wouldn't want to impose, she murmured, though a tiny, rebellious part of her desperately wanted to say yes. Leo's smile didn't falter. No imposition at all. I was planning on grabbing a coffee anyway. Company would be most welcome. He paused, then added, unless you have other plans, of course. She didn't. Her plan had been to return home, make a cup of weak tea, and lose herself in the pages of someone else's life. But Leo, with his easy smile and genuine warmth, was offering her a chance to step out of the shadows and into the sunlight. All right, she said, the word feeling surprisingly light as it left her lips. Coffee sounds lovely. The aroma of roasted beans and cinnamon swirled around them as they entered the daily grind. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Leo led her to a small table tucked away in a corner, near a bookshelf overflowing with well-loved paperbacks. This place is charming, Eleanor said, her gaze sweeping over the mismatched chairs and hand-painted mugs. Isn't it? Mrs. Higgins, who owns it, makes the best scones this side of the county. Leo grinned, then went to the counter to order. He returned moments later, balancing 2 steaming mugs. 1 latte, extra foam, and 1 Earl Grey tea for the discerning lady. Eleanor chuckled, a sound that felt rusty and unfamiliar. You remembered. How could I forget? He settled into the chair opposite her, his eyes crinkling at the corners. So tell me, besides mystery novels, what else captures your imagination? And so they talked. About books, of course, but also about their love of gardening, the quiet satisfaction of watching things grow. Eleanor discovered that Leo, despite his youth, possessed a deep appreciation for the simple pleasures of life. He spoke of his volunteer work at the local animal shelter, his dream of writing a children's book, his fascination with astronomy. Eleanor, in turn, found herself sharing snippets of her past, memories of her late husband, Thomas, and their life together. She talked about their garden, a riot of color and fragrance, and the joy they found in nurturing it together. She even confessed her secret ambition to learn how to paint watercolors, a dream she had long since abandoned. As she spoke, she noticed a shift within herself, a thawing of the icy grief that had gripped her for so long. Leo listened with genuine interest, his eyes never wavering, his presence a comforting anchor in the turbulent sea of her emotions. The cafe buzzed with the murmur of conversation and the clinking of cups, but in their little corner, time seemed to slow. The sunlight shifted, painting the walls in hues of gold and amber. As they finally rose to leave, Eleanor felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. It was a fragile thing, this hope, but it was there nonetheless. "Thank you, Leo," she said, her voice soft. "For the coffee. And the conversation." He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "The pleasure was all mine, Eleanor. Perhaps we could do this again sometime?" She hesitated for only a moment. "I would like that very much." Roses and remembrance. The scent of damp earth and burgeoning blooms hung heavy in the air when Leo arrived. Eleanor was already in the garden, her worn gardening gloves pulled on, a trowel resting in her hand. Sunlight caught the silver threads woven through her dark hair as she knelt amongst the rose bushes. "Leo, good morning," she said, her voice a soft melody. A genuine smile touched her lips, chasing away some of the shadows that usually lingered there. "Morning, Eleanor. I brought the fertilizer and those pruning shears you mentioned." He gestured to the bag at his feet and the tools tucked into its side pocket. "Thank you, dear. These roses. They need a bit of attention. Thomas always took such pride in them." Her voice wavered slightly, the mention of her late husband a fragile note in the otherwise cheerful morning. They worked in companionable silence for a while, Leo following Eleanor's instructions as she showed him how to properly prune the thorny stems. The air buzzed with the sound of bees flitting from blossom to blossom, drunk on nectar. "He used to talk to them, you know," Eleanor said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "Thomas. He'd tell them about his day, about the weather, about anything that was on his mind. Said it helped them grow." She chuckled softly, a sound that warmed Leo from the inside out. "Did it work?" he asked, carefully snipping off a dead bloom. "Well, look at them," she said, gesturing to the profusion of vibrant colors, crimson, blush pink, sunny yellow. "They certainly thrived under his care. This one here," she pointed to a deep red rose, its petals velvety and full, "is Thomas's pride. It was his favorite. Always the first to bloom." Leo reached out, gently touching a petal. It felt like silk beneath his fingertips. "It's beautiful, Eleanor." As they worked, Eleanor shared more stories about Thomas and his roses, how he'd meticulously research each variety, how he'd spend hours in the garden, lost in his own little world. Leo listened intently, absorbing every detail, feeling a connection to a man he'd never met, a man who clearly held a very special place in Eleanor's heart. He always said that roses were a reminder of life's beauty, even amidst the thorns. Eleanor mused, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. And of its fragility, too. They need constant care, constant attention. Just like everything, I suppose. Leo looked at her, seeing the sadness that still lingered in her eyes, but also a flicker of something else, a spark of hope, perhaps. He reached out and gently squeezed her hand. "We can take care of them together, Eleanor. We can make sure Thomas's pride continues to bloom." Over the next few weeks, the garden underwent a transformation. Leo visited often, helping Eleanor weed, water, and fertilize. They laughed, they talked, they shared stories and dreams. The roses, under their combined care, flourished. The colors grew more vibrant, the blooms more abundant. The air was thick with their perfume. The garden became more than just a collection of roses. It became a sanctuary, a place of healing and remembrance, a place where the past and the present could intertwine, and where the promise of a brighter future began to blossom. And in the heart of that garden, two souls began to find solace and connection, drawn together by the shared beauty of the roses and the enduring power of love. Whispers in town. Agnes Peterson's lace curtain twitched, a silent sentinel observing the goings-on of Willow Creek. From her perch, she had a clear view of Eleanor Willowbrook's garden, and this afternoon, Eleanor was not alone. That Maxwell boy, Leo, was there, perched on the edge of the stone birdbath, listening intently as Eleanor gestured animatedly toward her prize-winning roses. Agnes narrowed her eyes. It wasn't right. A woman like Eleanor, still in mourning, shouldn't be entertaining young men. Not so soon, anyway. Agnes watched them for another 10 minutes, her disapproval growing with each shared smile. She finally let the curtain fall with a decisive thwack, a plan already forming in her mind. The next morning, Agnes found Mrs. Gable tending her petunias. "Terrible tragedy about poor Thomas," Agnes clucked, shaking her head sorrowfully. "Still feels like yesterday, doesn't it?" Mrs. Gable sniffled. "It does, Agnes, it does." "And Eleanor," Agnes continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Such a sweet woman. But I do worry about her. Seen her lately with that Maxwell boy." Mrs. Gable's eyes widened slightly. "Leo Maxwell? The librarian?" "The very one," Agnes confirmed with a knowing nod. "He's always over there. She should still be grieving, not gallivanting." The seed was planted. By afternoon, the whisper had spread like bindweed through the town square. Eleanor, venturing out for groceries, felt the prickling sensation of being watched. Mrs. Higgins, usually so chatty, offered only a curt nod as they passed. A group of women huddled by the bakery, their voices dropping to hushed tones as Eleanor walked by. She couldn't quite make out the words, but the looks they exchanged, a mixture of pity and disapproval, spoke volumes. Inside the market, Mr. Abernathy, the butcher, cleared his throat pointedly as he wrapped her order. "Keeping busy, Eleanor?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral, yet somehow accusatory. Eleanor felt a flush creep up her neck. "Just trying to," she mumbled, avoiding his gaze. The whispers followed her home, clinging to her like a persistent fog. She caught snippets of conversation from passers-by. "Too soon, inappropriate, the Maxwell boy." Each word was a tiny barb, pricking at her fragile composure. Back in her garden, the roses suddenly seemed less vibrant, the birds' song less cheerful. Leo was due to arrive any minute, and for the first time, Eleanor dreaded his visit. The joy she had found in his company was now tainted by the town's judging eyes. She considered canceling, but the thought of disappointing him, of retreating back into her shell, was equally unbearable. When Leo finally arrived, his usual easy smile faltered slightly as he took in her strained expression. "Eleanor? Is everything all right?" She forced a smile, but the words felt hollow. "Just a little tired," she lied, hoping he wouldn't notice the tremor in her voice. But in his eyes she saw a flicker of understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the whispers that had woven their way into her life. A hurtful rumor. The cream-colored envelope felt heavier than it looked in Eleanor's trembling hands. It was addressed simply to Mrs. Willowbrook, penned in a spidery, unfamiliar script. She'd found it tucked beneath the ceramic robin on her porch, a place no delivery person would think to leave mail. A chill snaked up her spine. This felt wrong. Inside, a single sheet of paper contained only a few lines, yet their impact was devastating. "Careful, Mrs. Willowbrook," it read. "Some men only see a grieving widow and a full bank account. Don't be so naive." The words swam before her eyes, blurring into jagged accusations. Leo. Was this about Leo? Eleanor sank into the plush armchair by the window, the afternoon sun suddenly feeling harsh and unforgiving. She reread the letter, the anonymous sender's malice burning into her skin. Had she been a fool? Blinded by loneliness and the unexpected warmth Leo offered? She thought back to their meetings, replaying every conversation, every gesture. Had there been a subtle calculation in his eyes she'd missed? Had the shared smiles been genuine, or merely a performance? He'd always been so attentive, so interested in her, but had that interest been in her or in what she possessed? A wave of nausea washed over her. The thought of Leo, of his gentle touch and easy laughter, now tainted with suspicion, was unbearable. Had she been so desperate for companionship that she'd ignored the obvious? The age difference, the whirlwind romance, it all seemed so glaringly obvious now, viewed through the lens of this hateful letter. Later that evening, Leo arrived, a bottle of her favorite elderflower wine in hand. He seemed brighter than usual, his eyes sparkling with an excitement she couldn't decipher. "Eleanor, you seem distant," he said, his brow furrowing with concern as he settled onto the sofa beside her. He reached for her hand, but she flinched slightly, pulling away. "Did something happen today?" he pressed, his voice laced with worry. She couldn't meet his gaze. The letter felt like a lead weight in her pocket, poisoning every word, every touch. I'm just tired, Leo. It's been a long day." He didn't push, but the air between them thickened with unspoken tension. He busied himself opening the wine, the clinking of the glass a sharp counterpoint to the turmoil raging within her. Eleanor watched him, her heart aching with a conflicting mixture of affection and distrust. Was he really the man she thought she knew, or was he merely a charmer, skillfully playing a role for his own gain? The thought was a cold blade twisting in her gut. She felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of doubt, the prospect of facing the truth more terrifying than the lie she might have been living. The vibrant colors of the room seemed to dim, the sounds of the evening hush, as if the world itself held its breath, waiting for her decision. The confrontation. The scent of roses, usually a comfort, felt suffocating. Eleanor snipped a dead bloom from a peace rosebush, the action more violent than necessary. Leo watched her from the garden path, a worried furrow etching itself between his brows. He'd arrived bearing a lemon cake, her favorite, but the usual warmth hadn't greeted him at the door. "Everything all right, Eleanor?" he asked, his voice gentle. She straightened, the clippers glinting in the afternoon sun. "Is it?" she countered, the question sharper than she intended. She tossed the dead bloom into her basket with unnecessary force. Leo stepped closer, his smile faltering. "I thought perhaps you seemed distant." He reached out, then hesitated, his hand hovering near her arm. "Did something happen?" Eleanor avoided his touch, turning her attention to another rosebush. "People have been talking, Leo." He frowned, his confusion evident. "Talking about what?" She took a deep breath, the floral perfume thick in her lungs. This was it. The moment of truth. "About us." "Well, I would hope so," he said, a hint of amusement returning to his voice. "We are rather conspicuous." "No," she said, the word clipped and cold. They're saying it's too soon. That I haven't even been a widow for a year, and here you are, courting me." She watched him, her gaze unwavering, searching for a flicker of guilt, a twitch of deception. The amusement vanished. He paled slightly, his eyes widening. "Courting you? Eleanor, I care for you deeply, but I haven't." He trailed off, searching for the right words. Eleanor pressed on, relentless. "They're saying you're taking advantage of a vulnerable woman. That you're preying on my grief." The words tasted like ash in her mouth. His jaw tightened. He looked genuinely shocked, almost wounded. That's a horrible thing to say. Eleanor, you know that's not true." Did she? That was the question that had been gnawing at her for days, ever since Mrs. Abernathy, with her carefully veiled concern, had planted the seed of doubt. Mrs. Abernathy, who always knew everything about everyone. "Do I?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Do I know that, Leo? Or am I just so desperate for companionship that I'm blinding myself to the truth?" He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His eyes, usually so bright and full of life, were now clouded with hurt. "Eleanor, look at me. Do you honestly believe I would do something like that?" He took her hands in his touch warm and firm. His palms were rough, a contrast to her own. She noticed a smudge of oil on his thumb, a reminder of his passion for restoring old cars. She searched his face, desperately seeking reassurance. But all she saw was sincerity? Or was it just a clever facade? The doubt, once a seed, had sprouted and grown into a thorny vine, choking her ability to trust. The scent of roses now made her nauseous. I don't know what to believe anymore, she admitted, her voice cracking. The lemon cake sat, forgotten, on the nearby bench, a symbol of the sweetness that might never be. Heartfelt explanation. The smile on Leo's face wavered, a chill replacing the warmth in his gaze as he registered Eleanor's rigid stance, and the almost imperceptible quiver in the hand cradling her teacup. What is it, Eleanor? You seem a million miles away. She wouldn't meet his eyes, her attention glued to the wisps of steam curling upwards. Small towns breed gossip, Leo. You know that. His brow furrowed, confusion clouding his features. Gossip about what, precisely? He moved to take her hand, but she recoiled, drawing back. The pain in his expression deepened like a bruise. Eleanor, you're unsettling me. Please tell me what's troubling you. At last, she risked a glance, her eyes a cloudy mixture of doubt and fragility. They're saying you're just being kind to the lonely widow. That you have ulterior motives. Leo reeled back as if slapped. What? What could I possibly want, Eleanor? Your collection of porcelain dolls? Is that really what they think? He shot to his feet, beginning to pace the room, raking a hand through his hair in agitation. That's deeply offensive. And wounding. More than you know. He halted, turning back to her, his tone gentler now, edged with a quiet despair. Eleanor, I've cherished our time together, that much is true. But it's been about something far deeper than mere pleasantries. I admire your intellect, your spirit, even that stubborn streak of yours. A chuckle escaped him, a faint echo of his usual exuberance. I never anticipated this suspicion. He sank back down, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. My grandmother, Nana Millie, she was the cornerstone of our family. After Grandpa passed, she was adrift. Of course, she had her children and grandchildren, but it wasn't the same. She missed his presence acutely. She missed the simple act of sharing her day, of having a confidant, someone to simply be with. He paused, his gaze drifting into the distance, lost in the corridors of memory. She actually joined a book club, believe it or not, just for the company. She befriended a very decent gentleman, a retired history professor. They started sharing tea, discussing books, the world, everything and nothing. It wasn't romantic, not in a conventional sense. But it was essential. He gave her something to anticipate, a reason to rise in the morning. He filled a void. And she, in equal measure, did the same for him. Leo met Eleanor's gaze square on, his own shining with candor. I witnessed firsthand how much that companionship enriched her life. How it rekindled her spark. Eleanor, I recognize that same solitude in you. And I genuinely care. I enjoy our talks, our strolls, the peaceful silences we share. It's not about anything beyond that. It's about connection. Is that such a crime? Eleanor regarded him, her face softening. The skepticism and anger seemed to dissipate like morning mist, replaced by a tentative glimmer of trust. She saw the raw hurt in his eyes, the unwavering sincerity in his voice. She saw a decent man, a compassionate man, a man who merely wished to share his time and his thoughts. Tentatively, her hand trembling slightly, she reached out and touched his. I believe you, Leo. A second bloom. Eleanor found Leo tending to the rose bushes outside her cottage, his brow furrowed in concentration. She watched him for a long moment, the sunlight catching the gold flecks in his hazel eyes. A pang of guilt twisted in her stomach. She'd been awful to him lately, cold and distant. The whispers in town had poisoned her thoughts, made her see suspicion where there was only kindness. She cleared her throat. Leo? He straightened, a relieved smile spreading across his face. Eleanor. I was just admiring your roses. They're thriving. They need care, she said, the word catching in her throat. Like people do. She took a step closer. I owe you an apology. I haven't been myself. The things people have been saying. She trailed off, unable to meet his gaze. Leo stepped towards her, concern etched on his face. Saying what, Eleanor? What's going on? She looked up, her eyes glistening. That you're taking advantage. That I'm foolish. That I'm rushing into something I'll regret. He reached out, gently taking her hand. His touch sent a jolt of warmth through her. Eleanor, none of that matters. What matters is what you feel, what we both feel. And if those feelings are genuine, then the rest is just noise. Eleanor's breath hitched. They are genuine, Leo. That's what scares me. He squeezed her hand. There's no need to be scared. I'm not going anywhere. The air crackled with unspoken words. The sun warmed her face, and for the first time in a long time, Eleanor felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. The days that followed were a balm to her wounded spirit. They walked through the woods, Leo pointing out the names of wildflowers she'd never noticed before. They sat by the river, the gentle murmur of the water a soothing counterpoint to their quiet conversations. They shared stories, dreams, and fears, building a bridge of understanding and trust. Leo helped her repaint the porch swing, his laughter echoing through the garden as she playfully flicked paint on his nose. He learned to bake her mother's famous apple pie, even though it took 3 attempts to get the crust just right. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Leo took her hand and led her to the newly painted porch swing. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sound the chirping of crickets. Thank you, Leo, Eleanor said softly, breaking the silence. For being patient with me. For seeing something in me that I couldn't see myself. He turned to her, his eyes filled with warmth. There was always something there, Eleanor. It just needed a little sunshine to bloom. Years later they sat on that same porch swing, hand in hand, watching the sunset. The rose bushes, now overflowing with blooms, climbed the cottage walls, a testament to the tender care they had both given. Eleanor's hair was streaked with silver, and Leo's face bore the gentle lines of time, but their eyes still sparkled with the same love and affection they had found in each other. Do you remember that day? Eleanor asked, her voice a soft whisper. The day I apologized? I was so afraid. Leo chuckled, a deep, comforting sound. I remember. And I remember thinking how beautiful you were, even when you were trying to push me away. Eleanor leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm so glad I didn't. He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. Me too, my love. Me too. The porch swing creaked softly as they swayed gently back and forth, 2 souls intertwined, proof that even after the longest winter, a second bloom was always possible.